The Yankees can win 95 games with this roster. That's not the question. The question is whether this lineup survives when the margin disappears. Because every October exit has looked different on the surface, but structurally, they failed the same way. So let's talk about what October actually does to a team. If you've ever been to a playoff game, you know the atmosphere is completely different than a regular season game. A regular season game, you get excited when there's big hits, late innings in the game, home runs, big strikeouts. In the playoffs, that place is hopping every single pitch from the very first pitch of the game. Because every little thing means so much more. Whether it's the wild card in a 3-game series, divisional series of best of 5, or in the league championship and World Series where it's a best of 7. Every little play matters. Every single hit, every single strike, every single error. There's fewer scoring opportunities. You're facing elite pitching almost every night. The bullpen shortened. The defensive mistakes are way amplified. And strikeouts cost you quite a bit more. October baseball removes comfort. So let's look at this roster through that lens. So as far as our current lineup goes, I kind of broke it down based on the players that we saw perform in the playoffs last year, since this year's lineup is very similar to last year. So based on the 13 players who made an appearance in the postseason, first thing I looked at was the power profile. How homer dependent is this lineup? What happens when balls stay in the park? And if they go 2 games without a home run, what does the offense look like? So, because we have such a similar lineup to last year, what I did was I looked at last year what streaks during the regular season of 2 games or more where we didn't hit home runs, what did that look like for this team? And that happened on 5 occasions throughout the season. The first of which was a 3-game stretch in Pittsburgh on April 6th. We lost 4-5 in 11 innings. In Detroit on April 7th, we lost 2-6. And in Detroit on April 8th, we lost 0-5. So far, with no home runs in a 2-game stretch, we're 0-3. The next time that we had a 2-game stretch was the end of April, April 23rd in Cleveland. We actually won the game 5-1, so we found a way to win, which is nice. And that was followed up on April 25th at home against Toronto with a 2-4 loss. Then, towards the end of May, we had a 2-game stretch in Colorado and then in LA against the Angels, where we beat the Rockies 5-4 and followed that up with beating the Angels 5-1. So we actually did have a 2-game stretch there against 2 pretty bad teams where we were able to win both games without hitting home runs. So that's a good sign. And then mid-June, we had a 4-game stretch against Boston and at home against the Angels where we hit no home runs and we scored a grand total of 3 runs in 4 games, including 3 shutouts. So we lost to Boston 3-4. We lost to Boston 0-2. We lost to the Angels 0-1 in 11 innings. and we lost to the Angels the next day 0-4. That's a real bad stretch to be shut out 3 games in a row. No home runs in 4 games and go 0-4, especially with half of those games being against a team like the LA Angels, who are not very good. And then we did it one more time in the end of July. We had a game against the Phillies that we were able to win 4-3, followed by a game at home against Tampa Bay that we lost 2-4. So what this is showing me is we couldn't beat anyone in our division when we had 2 or more games of no home runs. We were 0-1 against Tampa, we were 0-2 against Boston, and we were 0-1 against Toronto. That's pretty bad. You got to find a way to win games, especially in your own division. I mean, you think about the end of the season last year, we ended up tied with Toronto, and we lost the tiebreaker. So any one of these games could have been the difference. You got to find a way to win without relying on the home run. So in all of those games against playoff teams, we went 2-5. Against non-playoff games, we went 2-4. So we still had a losing record. If we don't hit the home run, we're screwed. So the next thing that I looked at was the strikeout vulnerability and who on this team actually hits for contact. And the way that I did this is I looked at the average hard hit rate. So the average hard hit rate in the major leagues is 43%, and the average strikeout percentage, which is 20%. So to have a good contact hitter, I took the players who were above 43% in the hard hit category and below 20% in the strikeout percentages. So those two combined were how I got our good contact hitters. Out of the 13 players in the playoff lineup, 3 players qualified as good contact hitters. One was Paul Goldschmidt, one was Ben Rice, and one was Ahmed Rosario. So only 2 of those players are consistent players on the team. Rosario, we'll see here and there, pinch hitting, defensive replacement, but we are not going to see him on a consistent basis, especially in the playoffs. So, in a 162 game season, streaks even out, but in a 5-game series, they will end your season. And the third category for hitting that I looked at was situational hitting. So, what do players do with runs in scoring position? Do these players expand when the leverage rises? When you have the opportunity to drive in runs, who can you count on to do that? So, as far as the average with runners in scoring position goes, we had actually 7 of the 13 players whose averages increased this past year with runners in scoring position. And that was Judge, Rosario, Wells, Bellinger, Stanton, Caballero, and Goldschmidt. So, of those players, 5 of those players hit for an average at 270 or above, which is pretty good. So I would say, as far as getting the job done when it needs to be done, the team actually did a decent job during the regular season of getting those hits and driving in those runs. The fact that 6 players And let's see, who are the 6 players? Volpe, Ben Rice, Jazz, Dominguez, McMahon, and Grisham. Those were the 6 players who did not hit for a high average with runners in scoring position and actually hit worse than their regular average during the season. And those are mostly regular players in our lineup. So that's a little bit concerning. But at least half of the lineup gets the job done. All right, so then that's as far as the offense goes. Another thing that we have to look at with this roster is the defense. Defense is under discussed. Can they convert marginal plays? Do they give away extra outs? And does the defensive range shrink the pitching burden? Can these pitchers go out there and have the balls be put in play and feel good about it? That their defense is going to make the plays that they need to play? Or are these pitchers going to have to put the team on their back and carry a greater burden and feel like they need to strike everyone out? Because in October, clean baseball isn't optional. And we saw that in the World Series when there were multiple defensive miscues in one inning that could have actually cost us the World Series. I mean, I'm sure there's a number of reasons that we could talk about. Different decisions, patterns, defense, mental mistakes. But the defense was actually a huge part of why we failed that year. And I looked at the fielding run value that each of those 13 players created, positive or negative, during the season last year. And I gotta say, only 6 had positive fielding run value in 2025. That's pretty bad when half of your team on defense is costing you runs. And that's last year after we tried to make it a focus to improve the defense because of how it cost us the World Series the year before. I will say I have to give them credit in the playoffs last year that the defense was much better in the playoffs than it was the playoffs the year before. But it's still not great to go through the full season and more than half of your team is costing you runs defensively. And then, of course, we have to look at the bullpen depth under pressure. This is where tension builds. Is there true depth? Does the trust in your bullpen arms narrow quickly? And can they survive a short start? If 2 arms aren't available, does the identity of the bullpen collapse? At this point, we know Bednar is going to be a solid closer, should be a solid closer. You trust Fernando Cruz based on what he's done here. Not so sure about Doval. He was a mixed bag. And then you lost Weaver and Williams. So, do you trust this bullpen? I don't know. I will say that a lot of the young guys have been impressive during the spring so far. I'm really interested in seeing if and when we get call-ups for Rodriguez and Lagrange and Hess, and those could bolster our bullpen. Also, I feel like Cashman usually does try to make trades during the season to help out with the bullpen, and those are usually a little bit easier trades for him to make during the season. So, I guess we'll see. Now, in the past seasons, in 2022, elite pitching neutralized our power. We got shut down 4 games to none by the Houston Astros in the ALCS. In 2023, depth eroded under injury. Aaron Judge missed a few games. Well, missed 50 plus games. We couldn't even make the playoffs. And then in 2024, late inning execution tightened. And there was no bigger stage for that than the World Series. So, different seasons, same structural tension. So now let's break it down. As far as the standard goes, the offense under compression. Does it pass the standard? Should we watch it or should we be concerned? I would say, as of right now, it's something we need to watch. Because we have a really good offense. We produce a lot of runs. But will we be able to win the games that we have to grind out? If we're not hitting home runs, are we going to be able to do the little things? Whether that's singles, walks, stealing bases, getting into scoring position, getting hits with runners in scoring position. Those are the things that are going to make or break this offense in the playoffs. So as of right now, I'll put that under watch. I'm not going to pass us. I'm not going to fail us. But that is something that we have to watch. The defense under pressure, honestly, it wasn't great last year during the regular season. I mean, Grisham even was a negative rating defensively. And he typically, throughout his career, up until last year, has been a phenomenal defender. So, I'm going to say I'm not really too concerned about our defense, especially since they played really well defensively in the playoffs last year. So hopefully that playoff defense will continue. We'll be able to play at a high level under pressure. So for now, I will say our defense will pass the standard this year. And then our bullpen under strain, that's where the concern is. Now, obviously, a lot can happen during the year. Like I said, we'll need to see what trades are made, what call-ups are made, and perhaps the players that we have on this team currently could surprise us. Whether that's good or bad, we'll see. But as of right now, I would say the bullpen under strain is a concern for me. So right now, this roster looks like it's built to win a lot of games. But whether it's built to survive October compression, well, that's still a question. The first 2 weeks won't decide anything, but they'll reveal whether this lineup expands under pressure or shrinks. Because the next structural stress test isn't offense, it's depth. This is The Standard with Brian Leavy.